Hi, I'm Javier Ibarreche, and I'm here with Tim Roth and MICHEL Franco, actor and director of the movie Sundown. How you guys doing?
Great.
I wanted to start, Tim, by asking you, your character, Neil, is kind of like a ghost. Except for choosing to stay at Acapulco at the beginning of the movie, he seems to be moved by other characters. Like, others choose a lot of things for him. Like, the taxi driver chooses the hotel. And basically, my question for you is, how do you portray this character with such spiritual complexity who technically is doing nothing?
Well, that's for me to know, for you to have an opinion about. That's what's interesting. What you said about the character is your perception of him, and I just will not give you what I know.
Okay.
It's interesting, but it's very much in keeping with the way that Michel works. But specifically, I think on this film, he does have his reasons.
Right.
But then what's interesting is the audience's perception of what he is.
Right.
And how silence can speak volumes.
Right. It's a movie that's a lot about the way we read the character.
It's
right?
It's very much that, which is going back to filmmaking from its golden era. Which
there's a thing that interests me a lot about the movie, which is we see the character Neil in these like 20, 30-second moments where he's just moving from one place to another. Moments that in other types of movies would have been cut out in the editing process. But here, these moments that like nothing seems to be happening are really part of the story. Why did you want to keep all these transitions, let's say, where we see Neil doing the same thing over and over?
At some point, the movie was going to be titled Driftwood, because it's really about his character drifting and just going with, whatever the wind takes him or the waves. And the hardest thing I'd say is apparently nothing is happening, but everything's happening right in front of your eyes. You're just, as the audience is judging or thinking that they're looking, at a certain thing, and then it turns out to be something else. But that's life, and I think when film can portray that, it becomes a lot more interesting than just dictating to the audience what characters are thinking and what they're doing, and just plot and story. So
and with music, your thing with music.
And music too, yeah, because normally, especially those scenes that you're describing, normally would be packed with music that would tell you, this is supposed to be funny, this is supposed to be sad, and Tim and I, we don't work like that. We rely on the framing and the way he plays it, and the silence. Silence can say a lot, and like Tim always says, doing nothing is the hardest thing.
Yeah. Plus, it adds kind of an element of suspense to it, because as an audience member, used to having things be way more quick or dramatic, having these moments in silence is like, it's way more tense. This tension is broken a couple of times with certain like surprising moments that we see in the movie, and I wanted to ask you about that, which is the scene where Neil doesn't really react to a man being shot at the beach. The movie opens with this shot of fish, and we see meat and raw meat and the pigs later. We find out that was a family business for Neil. Is there a connection between those two, like the cruelty that Neil grew up with versus the lack of response to seeing such violence at the beach?
I mean, I wouldn't dare to give a straight answer. I'd say yes, definitely there's a connection, but hopefully there are more connections that I can even start to explain as a director, because I think the possibilities that cinema, only cinema has, more than literature or any other art, is working on the mind of the audience, and making this connection, and by mixing these elements, the audience will make what they decide to make with it. I like when films navigate between reality and dream. That kind of mystery where you're not certain if what you're seeing on screen is really happening. And that's not, it's not so important if it's happening or not. It's what's happening inside of you while watching the movie. But that's cinematic. That's impossible to explain. And with this movie, I really wanted to push into that territory. And I think Acapulco provides the environment for that. Having said all that, there is an element of karma that has to do with his past, with where he's coming from. And we learn a little bit about that through these dreamy images.
Right. Following up on that, does Neil feel guilty about something? Is that one of his drives?
What do you think?
I don't know. I think he is because of the way he moves. But
there you go. I mean,
God damn.
I know it's hard, right? But it's that's what's fantastic about it. It's like it's over to you. What do you think? You know, and I know, but I'm not telling. But I'm not telling you. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah.
Okay. But in a more technical, from a more technical point of view, repetition.
Oh, one thing. I'm going to jump right in.
Yes, please.
We brought up music. There is music, but it's there.
It's there.
It's the music of the place.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we see the same song played twice. We see the
Sabor
same.
a mí.
That's right, Sabor a mí, which is a song that, and we kind of see the two Acapulcos, right?
Yes,
we see like
exactly.
the luxurious one made for foreign tourists, and then the one that's more local. Is that part of like the social discourse that you try to put into this movie, or why show these two versions of that?
Well,
of that place?
I did try to explore every phase of Acapulco. Of course, we cannot see everything in 90 minutes, but we do see the high-end resort, and then we go all the way to Caleta, which is my favorite Acapulco, and then we go to the house where Yasua's character lives, and we see that neighborhood. So Sabor a Mí by Eli Guerra is something very special to have in a movie. But then we have it also in the beach with this guy that we hired on the day. That was fantastic.
You hired him on the day.
Yeah, I love doing that. Everyone that's on the movie at the beach,
I love that.
They're the real fishermen.
They were on holiday and they were working.
That actually,
there.
it seems very genuine. That aspect, the way they approach the tourists. And did they think you were a tourist when they were?
I don't think they cared about me, except it's like, what's the gringo doing here? It's ruining my view. But no, it was. No, it was what it was.
No, normally a movie would close down the beach for a day or two, fill it with 200 extras or whatever.
And tell them what to do.
Yeah, and that would be fake. You don't go to Acapulco for that. You don't capture Caleta in that way. So it was challenging for us, but
they were good though.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the only professional actress is Yasua, and she mixed. She went in advance days before we shot to mingle.
That's right. Of course, I remember that she did.
Yeah.
To kind of become a part of the place. Before
get to know people. Who was that? And the woman who worked in the shop behind that we did scenes with, me and Yasua.
Well, she was the owner of the shop.
Yeah, she was the owner of the shop.
The actual owner of the shop.
The pregnant woman.
That was her.
Wow. Everyone's for real.
Yeah.
The taxi driver, the main taxi driver, he's the sweetest. He's a school teacher.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you from a more technical point of view. I was about to say before, repetition is like a constant element in this movie, right? We see Neil, when he decides to stay in Acapulco, he does pretty much the same thing every day over and over. From an actor's point of view, working with that repetition but building something different, how do you do that? How do you make it different whilst doing the same?
I was unaware that I was doing the same thing.
Really?
I was just having my day, and whatever he shoots of it. I mean, we would decide. This quite often was like, what do you want to? What's the scene about? And we would have a quiet word about that with Yasua. Okay, good. We know what it's about. We'll see how we get there on the day. The repetition was, I never really thought of the repetition while I was doing it.
Never felt like
I
you
was
were
just
repeating something?
just in the moment, and if something occurred, like I suppose it did get to the point where if Misha said, okay, you could probably get up here and go get something from back or whatever, it seemed like a huge move. So that's a big moment. And which I loved that. So no, it was never a challenge. Sometimes some of the hardest things to do is appearing to do nothing. There are little tricks that you can use in your mind to achieve that.
Can you give us one?
No.
You're keeping everything.
No, that's
But I like
between
that.
me
I
and
like that.
Yasuo.
All right.
He doesn't even know.
Well, I wanted to ask you as well about. This is kind of just like a fun fact for me. Michel, what would you say? Getting out of the movie a little bit. What is your favorite Tim Roth movie?
Oh, Jesus.
Well, I gotta say, I probably said this to Tim once, but we don't talk often about these things. But when I was a teenager, I adored Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and I still do photographs of those in my bookshelf, and I never could have imagined that we would end up working together. But even more so than that, I remember I saw The War Zone, the film that he directed, without knowing that he had directed it or anything. I just went to the movies and watched it, and I remember exactly saying, I was probably 16 or something. I said, "That's the kind of movie that I would like to make someday if I'm ever able to make movies." So somehow, the sensibility-wise, we were connected from there.
And that's weird that we met because of the Specialist de Lucia, which I found very difficult to watch. I mean, it's very, very hard to watch. But we met and started our journey there, didn't we? Because after the festival was over in Cannes, we talked and then began our journey. But so in a way, I don't know if you were asked me what's my favorite.
Michel Franco, I was about to.
It would be my first experience of him, because that began the journey.
Right.
That began our story, and wherever we go with it next.
Speaking of which, I know this probably you get asked this question a lot, but I have to know. This is the second time you work together as director and actor after Chronic. How is the experience different? You know, besides the specific plot of the movie, working with each other, how did that artistic relationship evolve?
It was very different because Chronic, we had just met 2-3 years before at Cannes. He was the head of the jury. For me, he was the best actor in the world. And for me, it was like overwhelming, and I prepared myself and worked on Chronic. And then a few years later, it was different. Still the best actor, but now my friend.
Right.
So when you're friends, you have more arguments, you question
this is more difficult. Much more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because
more difficult.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This film is. Yeah.
Also, how do you prepare for this film? With Chronic, it was very clear. You know, the film was about a certain subject, but this was like, let's just go to Caleta and get lost there. Well, good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was challenging, and I'm very proud of how it turned out.
Right.
Yeah.
You were mentioning, just before I wrap up, you have worked with documentary. How was that helpful in this movie? Because a lot of what you've told me so far, it seems like you kind of went there, put a camera, and just let things happen.
Ooh.
Is there like a connection between the style of a documentary or the type of filmmaking you did here?
I wouldn't say documentary, but I definitely don't like artificial cinema. So again, we both like, and he even worked with Alan Clark, for example, you know, the ultimate mix between, erasing the boundaries between what's real and not. But if we were going to Acapulco, it was to capture that for real. And for that, we need to be more patient. But then you have Charlotte Gainsbourg, so,
Right.
she's fantastic. But I want to make the most out of having Charlotte in Acapulco. So it's not a documentary. How do you make her as real as the environment?
Right.
And they're very talented actors. That's how they achieve that.
Oh, it's a very much a character-driven movie, and the actors are a key part of it.
Everything.
And just before my time runs over, Tim, if you were to define this movie with one word, which could that be? I know it's tricky. I gave you about 15 seconds to think about that.
One word. Yours.
I love that. Thank you. Well, great. Tim, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the movie. I hope to see it again in the big screen this time. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Just come home.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.